jumping into things right away. So I think that it's been hinted at in some of these other conversations, but what I'm going to look at is the key trends that we're seeing across all the markets here in Thailand. And I'll dive into each market, the four resort markets in particular, and we'll take a look at who's driving demand in each market, how their motivation has changed, and what types of properties that they're purchasing. So I think we can all agree that consumer behavior has very much changed since the pandemic, and we'll identify some key trends across these markets. But before we dive into the data for each market, let's take a look at an overview on how demand has changed across Thailand. TJ just nailed this perfectly, talking about Hua Hin. So when we compare pre-COVID 2019 to today, we can see that one of the first key trends is that the growth in popularity in Hua Hin. And you can see when comparing this to pre-COVID market conditions, that it has seen the greatest jump in interest and popularity at about 5%, where some of the other markets, you look at the other four main holiday markets we're talking about today, Pattaya has dipped slightly, Koh Samui has dipped slightly, and interest in Phuket has definitely softened. We'll dive into the Hua Hin interest in my slide in a minute, but as TJ mentioned, the proximity to Bangkok and the overall value of real estate in that market and the different types of properties that are available, from one bedroom or studio, 1 million baht condos, all the way up to some of the beautiful banyan villas. There's a good selection of property that makes Hua Hin a very popular destination. Looking at how Phuket interest has softened, this leads us to our slide and talking about really historically that Phuket has been a market that's been driven by international investors. And it's been a market where there's been always solid interest in a mix of condominiums and landed properties, houses or villas. And you can see that that's very much still reflected in the sold unit types by data. So you can see that there's a good mix of studios and one bedrooms. We've been very successful at selling properties at Laguna this year as well. And then there's a mix of larger 2 and 3 bedroom properties. When we look at how that's driving the units by pricing range in this category, it is a reflection of the mass market in Thailand. Is that mass market is between under 5 million baht. We can see that that's driving majority of the transactions here in Phuket. And likewise, there is a growing segment of the market that we'll see across other markets as well. That is the 5 to million baht segment is growing in interest. And that's largely because of the key trend number 2 here is buyer's motivation. And we spoke about this, that because of the pandemic, you can see that interest is very much shifting from investment driven to holiday home driven, second home properties, so that people can escape and get away and find a little bit more space. That's just not reflective in Hua Hin or Phuket. We'll see that this is one of the key trends across all of the markets that we're seeing. This trend continues in Samui, as I mentioned, which has largely been a villa market. And that's reflected in the sold unit types that we can see here. It's not a very densely populated condominium market. So you can see the majority of the transactions are 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, which is an indication of landed property selling. And that again reflected in the unit price range. That when we look at Samui, the transaction volume is more spread out and more tapped into the luxury market there because of the larger bedroom configurations. An interesting point, which leads us to kind of one of our key trend number 3, is that Samui is a less popular market for the domestic market. And in fact, it's the least popular market when we look at these markets that we're considering today, which is key trend number 3, is that there is definitely, it's a domestic-led buying power. And that it's the domestic buyers that are transacting, as we spoke about, because they're limited. We're all locked in Thailand. In the past, you'd probably travel, the domestic market would travel and invest overseas. UK was very popular, but now that drive in holiday homes and that drive from the domestic market, we can see that the domestic market is a very powerful market, particularly in Pattaya, which we see here, and the next market, which is Hua Hin. So that buying power has translated for Pattaya market, which is largely a condominium market, which we can see again in the different types of units that are selling. But likewise, similar to Phuket, that there is a growing segment of the market in affordable landed properties between the 5 to 12 million price point. But again, in Pattaya, smaller units, the mass market here is under 5 million baht. Last but not least is kind of the star of the pandemic. Really this market ties all of the trends together, that you can really see that motivation here for a second home it's a hockey stick. It's trending upwards. Hua Hin was never a huge market for pure investment, but we can see that as a destination to get away from pollution, crowded cities, that Hua Hin is a great market. So the unit sold is a mix of condos and villas. And again, I think that is a reflection that there is different property types for everybody's. There's smaller condominiums that are much more affordable for around 1 million, 2 million baht. There's oceanfront condominiums with beautiful sea views. And then there's this segment of the market, which is affordable landed property, which is 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms, which you can see in the middle segment here. So overall, we see that looking forward, we see that these trends still continue. We're looking optimistically though, because with the sandbox model, just in the past few weeks, we've been able to transact properties in Phuket, in Bangkok, in Koh Samui, with international buyers who've actually been through the 2 weeks in Phuket and have been able to travel out into other markets to purchase properties. So we're optimistic about the future, but it is largely domestic-led buying power that is the foreseeable future.